Welcome to Stop and Scare. I'm so glad you found me. Stay a while and let me scare the hell out of you. Subscribe if you're new and like the video to help the channel grow. If you would like your story featured on an upcoming video, email the email in the description box below. Sit back, relax, and enjoy a good scare. Grizzly bears are the largest predator in North America, but they seldom pose a threat to outdoorsmen who've taken the proper precautions. According to the National Park Service, historical data shows that on average, one person a year dies from a grizzly bear attack, and since the turn of the century, grizzly and black bears collectively have killed fewer than 50 people in North America. So, though fatal bear run-ins are rare, each year a handful of hunters come face to face with these mighty animals and are forced to fight for survival or simply get lucky and live to tell the tale. One such hunter was Richard Wesley, who late last month survived a black bear attack while turkey hunting in Ontario. A video of the encounter seen nearly 4 million times serves as a reminder of why bears shouldn't be taken lightly. In October of 2016, Stephen Vouch, 29, was attacked by a 275-pound black bear while on an Idaho sheep hunt. He goes on to say, "I've hunted with my friends Bobby and Chris a lot over the years, but this was our first time floating the West Fork of the Salmon River. It was the day 14 of our trip, and we hadn't seen a good-sized ram yet, so we were still pushing it forward. That day, we'd run some big rapids, so we were exhausted by the time we stopped on Sheep Creek. We set up camp and ate, then I crashed at 10:30. I was sleeping in a bivy sack next to Bobby, with a tarp strung over all of us. Well, at 2 a.m., something woke me. It felt as if I was being pulled by my hair. The first thing I did was grab the back of my head, which was all wet, and then I saw this shadowy figure over me. Without realizing it, when the bear had bitten my skull, I'd whacked him in the mouth out of reflex, which made me jump and knock the tarp down on top of us, with my head still right between his front paws. I yelled and started reaching for my pistol, but the bear had shoved it out of reach while rummaging around. But then Bobby woke up and saw him standing over me and grabbed his Judge revolver. He lifted the tarp to see, and then, sticking the gun right above my head, shot the bear in the face from 1 foot away. After that, the bear ran up a tree above us, but I managed to find my rifle and put him down quickly. There was blood everywhere. Bobby and Chris helped me clean the wounds and skin the bear. Then we just slept late the next day and kept looking for sheep. It was one of the greatest adventures of my life, and further instilled why you should make sure the guys you're hunting with know what they're doing. This could have ended up a lot worse than it did." In the fall of 2010, Kim Wunderlich was bow hunting for elk in Montana's gravelly mountains when a grizzly bear charged. It was September 17th, my 49th birthday. I was bow hunting with my friend John Wasser, and on this day we rode our ATVs about 5 miles from our camp before walking into a drainage. We could hear buggling on the ridgeline, and by the late morning we'd gotten on some bulls, but no shots. It started getting hot, so we decided to hike out. At around 1:30 we were scaling a timbered hillside when we heard a branch break above us. I looked up, and there were 2 grizzly cubs about 25 yards away, standing on their hind legs. I turned to John and said, "Bear!" Just then, the sow came at me full speed. I just remember seeing claws in her mouth. This wasn't a rear-up attack. It was like getting hit by a car. Right before she barreled into me, I stuck my longbow sideways in her mouth. As we tumbled down the hill, John was screaming, trying to get the bear's attention. He thought she was going to kill me. The bear probably weighed 500 to 600 pounds. After we came up to stop 15 or 20 yards below, she bit me really high up on the inner thighs. Then she released me. For a moment I just lay still. I didn't move until I heard her woofing up a hill. When John got to me, he was shocked to see that I was standing. My arrows were everywhere. I could feel blood running down my legs, but I didn't want to look at them. Fear doesn't enter until you know what you're up against. It was about 1.5 miles to the ATVs, and we had about 1,000 vertical feet to climb. But from that point on, my only purpose was to get out of there. We packed the weapons and gauze and went. By the time we got to the hospital in Dillon, it was 8:15 at night. The doctor said the bear missed my femoral artery by 1 centimeter. Officials from Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks took DNA samples from my pants because of another bear attack in the area. So far, we haven't heard the results. In October of 2016, a grizzly bear attacked Rick Hollingsworth, 47, while he was hunting elk in Alberta, Canada. That morning, my cousin Rob and I were headed out to hunt near the Simonette River, but only I had a rifle with me, since Rob didn't have a big game license at the time. We were about 1/2 mile from the truck when we noticed fresh wolf tracks in the snow. As we kept walking, we saw a spot through the woods where crows were scavenging on a dead animal. I loaded my rifle as we slowly approached, thinking we might come upon a wolf eating the carcass. I heard this low, calling sound, but a big spruce was blocking my view, so I couldn't see what was making it. That's when Rob yelled, "Grizzly!" The bear charged straight at him, and with no time to lift my gun, I fired from the hip and hit the bear's shoulder. As soon as I shot, the grizzly turned and charged me. I shot again, from maybe 8 yards, but it just kept coming. It swiped at me, spraying its own blood everywhere, but I ducked out of the way. When I shot the 3rd time, the bear was no more than 2 feet away from me. Now, we were face to face, and my gun was empty. It swiped at me again, but its arm was hurt. That's when the bear opened its mouth to bite me, and I shoved my gun barrel right down its throat. It chewed on the rifle for a few seconds, but I had stunned it, I think. It backed up 20 yards, giving me a chance to reload and fire a final shot. At last, the bear went off and died in the forest. The whole event lasted just 10 seconds or so, but it was the most scared I've been in my life. I just tried to stay on my feet and remain as big as possible. Grizzlies are beautiful animals, and if there were another way, I would let it live, but it didn't give me that option. In 2009, Orville Sanders, 83, was mauled by a black bear that was wounded during a hunt in the Tahoe National Forest. A group of my friends wanted to get their first bear, so I brought my Plott and Walker hounds to help. When they opened up and started running, I knew they sniffed something big. We caught up with them 30 minutes later under a pin oak, where they were barking up 3 bears. My knees give me my trouble, and I needed a rest. I knew that you shouldn't ever get under a treed bear, so I walked to an older deer trail that I thought was a safe distance from the action. Meanwhile, my friend shot and hit one of the bears. After another shot, the bear suddenly jumped from the tree, cleared my friends, and bounded straight for me. I tried to pull myself up from where I sat, but it was only a moment before he was 6 feet away and rearing up on his hind legs. I threw my hands up to protect my face, and the bear latched onto my arms with his teeth and claws. Then I heard a bang. My friend Charlie had shot the bear right in the head. What happened next is a blur. I remember blood running to the floor of my friend's truck as he doubled the speed limit to the nearest Forest Service station. The next thing I knew, I was in a helicopter with tubes coming out of my arms. Then, I fell into the blackness. I awoke 2 days later in the Sutter Roseville Medical Center. The doctor told me that if I had arrived 1 hour later, I would have died. I had lost 4 pints of blood to that fucking bear. The bear, which weighed almost 300 pounds, had broken my left arm in 4 places. Even after therapy, my left thumb is partially paralyzed, and the shooting pain comes and goes. It's a reminder of how powerful these animals are. I was done for the season, but I'm not done forever. I'm just going to watch where I sit. On the afternoon of Sunday, August 2nd, 2009, one old emaciated brown bear became of great personal concern to Greg Brush. This is his story. Brush, a veteran salmon fishing guide from the town of Saldonta, was walking his dogs on a rare day off from work. On his hip was a large handgun, a Ruger chambered for the powerful .454 cartridge. Brown bears are a constant presence in Brush's neighborhood, and many residents feel the largely unhunted animals have little fear of man. Because of many bear-related incidents in the area, Brush always has brown bears on his mind, even when walking a well-maintained road. On just such a road, less than 500 yards from his house, Brush stopped when he heard a twig snap behind him. Turning his head towards the sound, Brush saw a monstrous brown bear charging towards him. There was no warning, he stresses. None of the classic teeth popping or woofing, raising up on hind legs, or bluff charging that you read about. When I spotted him, he was about 15 yards, his head down and his ears back. He was coming like a freight train, in total chase mode. Brush instinctively backpedaled to avoid the charge, drawing the Ruger from its holster. I fired from the hip as he closed the distance, Brush recalls. I know I missed the first shot, but I clearly hit him after that. I believe I fired 4 or 5 shots. Brush finally fell on his back, on the edge of the road. Miraculously, the bear collapsed a mere 5 feet from his boot soles, leaving claw marks in the road where Brush had, only seconds before, been standing. The bear was moaning, his huge head still moving, as Brush aimed the Ruger to fire a finishing shot. By then, my gun had jammed, Greg says. I frantically called my wife on my cell phone and told her to bring a rifle. When she arrived, I finished the bear. Greg had to file a Defense of Life Property report after the incident. Biologists determined that the bear, a boar that measured 9'6" from nose to tail, 10'6" from paw to paw, was between 15 and 20 years old and weighed between 900 and 1,000 pounds and was underweight by an estimated 400 pounds. His teeth were just worn out, and you could see his ribs through his hide, Brush said. Normally they're eating mainly salmon, moose calves, or carrion right now as they put on fat for the winter. This bear had grass in his molars, a sure sign he was starving to death. He would not survive the winter. Brush said the boar's head was huge and heavy. He had mainly scars and wounds, indicating he may have been run off by other bears. 2 biologists and 2 veteran bear guides have told me that this was a predatory charge. There were no carcasses nearby that he was defending, and obviously no cubs to protect. Had I not been able to kill him, he'd have killed and likely eaten me. In the days following the attack, Brush has spent a lot of time pondering many what-ifs, he says. I'm just so thankful that it wasn't my wife and or girls walking down that road, and there are so many little things. What if I hadn't heard that twig? What if I'd missed those shots? I'm not exceedingly religious, but someone was watching over me that day. Just getting that heavy Ruger out of his holster and firing in that time frame is nearly impossible. After the accident, I tried to duplicate that shooting, and the most I could pull off was 2 shots in the seconds it took for the attack to happen. Incidents like these prove the difficulty of managing brown bear population in areas like Kenai Peninsula. The Alaska Department of Fish and Game says that some critical brown bear habitat is threatened by human encroachment from commercial, recreational, and residential developments. Therefore, they severely restrict hunting for browns to help keep populations viable. But such protection is coming at a cost to the human residents of Kenai. While incidents as dramatic as Greg Brush's are rare, human bear encounters are not. Bear guide Charles Allen led Cabela Outfitters Journal host James Lattis and cameraman Carrie Say on a grizzly hunt. The group was charged by a bear. Allen tells the story. We had spotted a good boar and were working within range. There were heavy rain and winds of 25 to 30 knots, but Jim made a perfect heart shot with his .375 at 55 yards. The bear went down, got up, Jim shot again, and it went down for good. "There's 2 more," said the assistant guide James Menifee, and 90 yards away was a very agitated sow and cub. The sow was bouncing up and down. She probably couldn't make us out as humans through the storm. I gathered up everyone and we began to move away, off the rise we were on, but she spotted us and immediately began charging. You can see on the film yelling, "Hey, bear," and waving my hands. I was hoping she would identify me as human, because they are hunted bears and generally very wary, but at that moment she locked onto my eyes in a way no bear ever had. I knew she was coming, so I shouldered my .404. She was a blur coming up that rise. There was no doubt in my mind that she was going to kill or seriously maim me, and then work her way through all 4 of us. I shot just as she came up on her hind legs and began to launch into me, and hit just left of dead center. That rolled her over backwards, and she came up facing the other way. She was pretty broken up. She only made it 20 yards before she died. We marked it off and I shot her at 12 feet. She had a 23-inch skull and was about 9 feet squared. She was 15, which is very old for a bear up here. Number 1. On my first trip to Europe, we started in Rome and drove down to Sicily, and on the way back north, we decided to stay the night in a small town instead of a major city. We ended up in a small town called Loria, right on dark, and hadn't booked any accommodations yet. As we drove around the town looking for a hotel, every local is stopping in their tracks and watching us like we're out of place. We find and pull up at the only hotel we could find, a multi-level building with an empty car park, no guests, no staff around. We went in and booked a room, and the guy who served us took our bags, put us in the elevator, and sent us on our way to our room. We get up 3 floors, and here he is waiting for us with our bags. It's a classic horror movie hallways, seemingly too long for the building, and only half the lights are working. It's dead quiet inside, so we put our stuff in the room and get out to see if the town is really that bad. We head out for dinner, again every person stopping and staring at us as we walk down the streets. The next morning, we wake up early to find all the doors are locked and cannot be opened from the inside without a key. No staff anywhere, so we left the key on the desk and had to break out the hotel window to get out. Number 2. My friend and I were on a road trip across the United States. I wanted to stop and get a postcard from each state as a memento. Washington, Idaho, Montana were all easy to find postcards. Wyoming is where it got a little complicated. It was about 1 a.m. when we were just about in South Dakota when I remembered that I hadn't gotten a card yet. We stopped at a Walgreens so I could find a card. I walk in and immediately get very uncomfortable. There was no one except for the cashier and a lady with a full cart of items. She's dressed all in white, like the whitest and cleanest white I've ever seen. She has matching white hair as well. I look around for postcards and don't find any, so I walked up to the counter. These two people have not yet moved an inch. The cashier is standing there, not moving, and holding the scanner. After about 3 minutes, she looks up at me like I just got there. She said, "What do you need?" in a sleepy voice. The lady in white turns around insanely fast and freaks me out a bit. She's incredibly pale, almost matching her outfit. She starts yelling, "He doesn't have anything. His hands are empty. Why don't you have anything?" For some reason, I managed to say I was looking for postcards, and the cashier just stared at me, saying nothing at all. The lady in white just kept whispering and pointing to me while repeating quietly that I had nothing in my hands to purchase. The cashier never moved. I glanced back as I jogged out the door, and they are right back to the exact same positions they were in when I walked inside. Number 3. This starts with my boyfriend, his brother, his brother's girlfriend, and I all deciding to split off from the rest of his family during vacation and head to the Winchester Mystery House. Now, since this is 6 or 7 years ago, I can't remember if we were headed to or back from there. I was driving, my boyfriend was a navigator. We started our trek and expected to be at our destination before nightfall. Somewhere along the lines, we took a wrong turn, although we had a map and both set our GPS. I didn't think about it at first, and nobody else mentioned it until what felt like a few hours of me driving. Now, this wasn't in silence, from what I remember. It was a normal road trip with talking, laughing, and music. But we got down this particular road, and it all feels like we snapped out of a dream. Everything is dark. There's shadows of trees bunched here and there along the road, but past that is just pitch black. I'm talking a void of darkness, where you feel it goes on for miles on end, but you can't see it. One of them said something along the lines of, "Where are we?" and joked that we entered the twilight zone. But I tell you, I got this really uneasy feeling like I shouldn't drive any farther than I already had. And I think everyone else felt that too, because we got really quiet and just kind of stared out the windows. Just this stillness, like we entered a place we shouldn't have. I flipped a bitch and started speeding off in the opposite direction. But lo and behold, the scenery we saw going back wasn't the same as we saw coming in. It was still pitch black, but none of it was familiar. You know how you can make out odd shapes from the shadows? But literally nothing looked like it was before. It took me a good 15 or 20 minutes to get out of the void. But to this day, every one of us swears we were driving for hours in it. We can't find that turn, although we've taken that route a few more times throughout the year. And it really does seem like it was a dream, except for the waking up part. It's like everyone was stuck on autopilot, and no one remembers what we said, or even what sounds we heard during those hours. Gives me the creeps. Number 4. My girlfriend and I went to an Airbnb in a town called Tiger, Georgia, to see a bunch of her college friends. There was one other couple who got there about the same time as us. By day, the cabin looks pleasant enough. 3 stories of rustic comfort with a hot tub overlooking the forest and sunrise. We didn't get there by day. We got there as the sun was sinking low. Rooms seemed to shrink and tighten. The stairwells were only as wide as a single body, and at the bottom of the basement stairs, a rug hid a padlocked trap door. It felt like the start of a horror movie. We're trying to ignore the weird vibes and decide to go to dinner. We spent nearly an hour driving around searching for a place to eat. Steakhouses closed by 7 p.m., an Italian joint which was someone's house, a Mexican eatery now abandoned and overgrown with vines. Finally, we find something. It's suitably called the last dive bar on Earth, and it's sitting on the edge of a retention pond. The parking lot is full of pickup trucks, all festooned with old political bumper stickers from the late 90s and early 2000s. We head in. It's like we've entered into another decade. But the beer is good. They have pizza and the prices aren't bad. We eat in a hurry and get out of there. As we get back to the cabin, the other couples are there and talking about how they had such a nice time in town. It was only by daylight at the end of the weekend that as we descended the mountain, we found a ton of local shops and restaurants that I swear to fucking God were not there the first night. On the first night, the electrical outlets in the house fried my phone, leaving me with no way to connect to the outside world. The weekend ended up being nice, but the entire time we all felt like we had fallen through a crack into some when else. Number 5. During a road trip with a friend, we decided to follow this road to a compound that had a gate, cameras, and a sign that said, "Unauthorized personnel will be shot on sight." We turned around as fast as we could and drove a few miles down the road where there was a truck stop and a Mexican restaurant. We were shaken by the sign and we were hungry, so we go to the restaurant. I'm not kidding when I say it was silent, and everyone looked at us when we walked through the door. What made it weirder is literally no one had food. Story number 6. Gary, Indiana. I got off the highway to get gas. Driving through the city was like a post-apocalyptic movie complete with burned out cars. Crazy guy in underwear walking down the middle of the street with a baseball bat, and all the windows were broken or boarded up. I stopped at a gas station, and then guy came out and said, "Get back on the highway, son. It's not safe here." I had enough gas to get to a safer rest stop to refuel. Number 7. I was on a road trip on the South Island of New Zealand, and one night at around 9 p.m. decided to stop in a small town to get some rest. Already while driving into the town, I noticed that there were Christmas decorations everywhere, like decorated trees and plastic Santas and reindeer. Excessive amounts of decorations on the street and in every window. This wouldn't have been too weird if it hadn't been in the middle of August, but I thought the town was really dedicated to a specific aesthetic, or whatever. I got to the motel and checked in, and the old lady at the front desk was short and rude with me, which I thought was weird, because I had experienced people in New Zealand as really nice and quite chatty. She also wouldn't give me the Wi-Fi password, even though they advertised free Wi-Fi. She quite literally told me to piss off and let her get back to her newspaper. After that, I went out, and the whole time I was there, I never saw any people on the street. I went to a diner near the motel, both also stuffed with Christmas decorations, and had the same experience with the waitress while ordering. She told me they were out of almost everything, and the only thing I was able to get was a cheese sandwich. There were other people in the restaurant who were all eating what I suppose were meals from the menu. They didn't have to order a plain cheese sandwich. While waiting for my food, I noticed that no one in the whole diner was talking, even though there were families and other groups of people. Even the kids ate in silence. Or not really silence, as there was Christmas music blaring. After I was done eating, I just paid and left. I was also the only one leaving. No one in that diner the whole time I was there got up to leave or go to the bathroom or do anything really. They all just sat there. When I left, I felt like they were all staring holes into my back. The whole time I was in that town, I got a feeling that everyone wanted me to leave, and like somehow they were angry with me. Story number 1. My school's library is open until 2 a.m. for the idiots like me who don't do their essays until the last minute. It's a pretty small building, and most of the books are in the basement area called the stacks. Just to give you a quick layout, there's the big main stairs that go down to the stacks, a vending machine room, and a long hallway with 4 entrances into the stacks. The stacks are 2 really big rooms on opposite sides of the hallway, with a huge amount of bookshelves and study desks lining the walls. I was there around 11 p.m. last year. It was a pretty research-intensive essay, so I was down in the stacks working in one of the study desks, so I didn't have to keep going downstairs and downstairs again. I'd been there for maybe 2 hours, and everyone except for a boy working a few desks down from me had left already. I was pretty zoned out by this point. It was an 8 a.m. class, so I didn't have much time until it was due, and I was sort of panicking, so it really pissed me off when I heard someone flipping through book pages really fast to make them do that loud whir noise at the other end of the room. I sort of ignored it for a while, thinking that they would go away eventually, but they just kept doing it. After about 5 minutes, I got sick of it and started to walk over to tell them to knock it off. I get about 3 steps across the room, and it just stopped. I sat back down, and it was quiet again for 10 more minutes before the flipping pages noise started again, only louder and louder, like they grabbed a huge book that last time. The boy started to get pissed off too, and he stood up and started walking through the bookshelves trying to find them. It keeps going, so I get up too and started looking around with him. It got really loud, and it was obvious where it was coming from by that point, so we started walking towards it. He was on one side of the shelves, and I was on the other. We walked all the way down the shelves. No one there. We hadn't seen anyone come in the stacks, and we were on the side of the room with the entrances. No way could anyone have come in without us seeing them. The noise stopped again, and we both just sort of slowly walked back to our seats. I assumed it was just a fan or something in the other room, and I really needed to get my essay done. We sat down and immediately the noise started again. It sounded like it was coming right next to the guy's chair. He shoved his stuff in his bag, looked at me, said, "Fuck this," and took off. I was out of there maybe 5 seconds behind him. I still won't go back in the stacks at night, even when there's other people down there. No essay is worth getting murdered by a weird book ghost. Story number 2. I was parked on the side street of my house with my friend. I live next to a dead-end road. The road faces 2 other houses, and all of my neighbors park their cars there. My friend didn't want to be rude to my family and block them in with her car, so she parked on the right side of the street so it would be easier for her to drive out and go home. My neighbor has a trailer, the kind you hook onto the back of your car. My friend lives with her parents, and she switches the cars that she uses frequently. We were in her dad's old beater Toyota Camry. I didn't get out of the car immediately because I wanted to talk for a little while before I went inside. All of a sudden, my neighbor, which I hadn't yet realized at the time was my neighbor, pulled up right next to our car. he got out of the car and started walking towards the door. I know that we made the wrong decision when this happened, but we were afraid. It was after dark, we were both girls, and he is a heavy-set bald man, so my friend put it in reverse and got out of there. Her intention was to go drive somewhere and wait 10 or more minutes before finally dropping me off, because she didn't want me walking inside alone while he was still there. I agreed, so we turned the street to leave. This is not what happened. What did happen was right after we turned, we saw another car. We just figured it was another car until we realized it was the same guy in the truck. We proceeded to drive across town trying to lose him. He honked his horn, turned the high beams on, and was driving up our ass the whole time. My friend somehow managed to not drive recklessly the entire time this was happening. We called the police soon after he started chasing us, and my friend started driving over to the police station while we were on the phone with the operator. We pulled into the parking lot of the police station, and he followed us. We proceeded to drive in circles around the parking lot. About 3 or 4 times he waited there on the other side of the lot to try and hit us with his car. He did this until an officer showed up and blocked him in. Then we both parked and started talking to the officer. Apparently, because we were in an old beater car and we were parked behind his trailer, he was convinced we were trying to steal stuff from him. He was still screaming when he was parked, and the officer was talking to him. The officer told both of us it was a misunderstanding and told us to go home. We went back with me and my friend's mother to the police station to ask about having officers patrol the area for a while. I'm currently in my house. This happened in the evening around 10 p.m. My neighbor got off with a warning, and he is in the house right next door. I don't think I'll be sleeping tonight. I know that I can't really do anything because he lives next door. I'm afraid to press charges in case he gets violent. I don't know if he actually thought we were going to steal from him, or he's on drugs or just crazy. But yeah, to my neighbor, I hope I don't have the misfortune to ever running into you again. Story number 3. I was in 9th grade at a really shitty school. The system there sucked, and it was located in a dangerous area of the city I lived in. I actually just remembered the story because it was so unusual for things like this to happen there that for me it was just normal, so I forgot. But looking back at it now, I realize that it's not normal. I was in PE class, and we were running laps around the school on the sidewalk to stretch. I was with my friend group of 5 girls, and we were walking behind as always, because PE for us was talking about school drama all period. We were walking and talking about the recent drama when a red truck slowed down behind us. It wasn't unusual. Every time we were walking outside of the school, a creepy man would slow down, so we didn't think anything of it and just kept walking and ignoring him. We saw his truck 2 or 3 more times. He was driving around the school and slowing down every time he passed by us. So we decided to tell our teacher, and she made us go back inside the gym. We started playing whatever game we were doing, and the teacher came to me and told me that I was asked to the main office because someone was here to pick me up. I was panicking because no one was supposed to pick me up during class that day, and I thought that maybe something bad had happened to either my mom or my dad or someone in my family. So I got changed into my normal clothes, grabbed my backpack, and rushed to the office. When I got there, the lady told me that there was a man waiting for me outside of the main doors. I got a little confused because usually my parents came to pick me up. They'd wait in the hall until I got there. I got a little confused when my parents came to pick me up. They'd wait in the hall until I got there. I took a look through the glass door and saw an old man. I'd never seen this man before in my life. I quickly walked back to the office and told the lady that I didn't know him, and what she told me next froze me with fear. She told me he said he was a friend of my parents and that they asked him to pick me up because my mother was in a horrific car accident. He told the lady my name and my last name, my age, my mom's name, and the grade I was in. I was shocked and immediately asked her if I could call my parents to confirm. I called my dad, and he told me that my mom was just fine and that she was working. The lady just told me to go back to class, and I never saw that man again. I never knew what happened after I left, and how did he know all of that information about me? My parents talked to the cops about this, and there was never anything that came of it. We never got any answers. Since that happened, I moved into a much safer city, and I hope I never see this man again. Story number 4. This is about weird encounters I've had with a music teacher back in high school. I was 16 when I was taking orchestra classes when I was in high school. Now, it's important to mention that I was incredibly quiet and shy back then and had trouble with confrontation. When I was in 10th grade, our orchestra teacher, Miss K, left the position, and they rehired our new teacher. Our new teacher, I will call him Mr. S, was generally disliked by everyone. He was in his 50s to early 60s. He was already imposing because of his size, but it made it worse how he treated his female students. One day in class, we were all struggling to play a song correctly. Mr. S became so frustrated and didn't think any of us understood the beat of the song. He looked around the class, saying he needed a volunteer. Everyone fell silent, including me, but I had the misfortune of locking eyes with him. He then called my name and waved me up to the front of the room. What happened next was not something anyone was expecting. I picked up my instrument, which was a cello, to take up front with me, and he said, "No, leave your instrument, just you." Now, I was very confused, but I did as he said. I walked up to his side, and he instructed me to stand in front of him. At this point, the class was beginning to snicker, and I was just very uncomfortable. "Move closer." I took a small step towards him, and at this point I was too scared to look at his face. All I could see was his buttoned shirt in front of me. He made me walk closer until I was inches from him. Then, he moved my arm up and put my hand in his. He proceeded to make me slow dance with him for what felt like forever as he counted the beat. I let go of his hand at one point and tried walking back to my seat, but he grabbed my arm and pulled me back, saying, "Not yet." After this was over and I went to my other classes, I learned that in each period of the day, he had chosen a female student to dance with him, regardless if the class was struggling to understand the beat. Unfortunately, this was not the end to what felt like unwanted attention from him. He would somehow find me in the hallways and would try to have talks with me about anything, even though I mostly kept to myself and didn't cause trouble in class. I got to a point that my friends understood how I felt and knew to say something to me when they saw him. Every time, without fail, he always managed to put his hands on my shoulders when he talked to me, even if I was already backed against a wall. He wouldn't let me leave, and I was too scared to say anything. He could find me in a crowd, easily. He didn't do anything to my knowledge that was punishable, but to me, something always felt off about him. So, to my creepy music teacher, let's not meet again, motherfucker. Story number 5. So, my friends and I were in a seaside Italian town called Anzio. The first night we were here, one of them got very drunk, and we really wanted to go to the beach and watch the ocean. Our other friends told us not to go because they were scared that we will get into the ocean and drown, but we promised them never to touch the water. We went off at 2 a.m. and the way over to the beach was smooth. There were only a few cars and maybe 2 or 3 passerbys. We sat at some stairs near the beach until 3 a.m. because then it got too cold. We started to go in the direction of our home after that. In the middle of our trip home, a white car stopped near us. A man lowered his windshield and said,
"Police, show us your documents."
It was very obvious that he wasn't with the police. He looked drunk and very scary. He repeated that phrase a few times. My friend and I didn't really say much apart from my friend warning the guy about a scooter that was trying to pass him. He then did a quick half turn, and at first I thought that he was going to run us over. It was a pretty narrow alley with nowhere to go, so that would have been very easy for him to do. But he only blocked our way and he shouted,
"Run, run."
We were freaked out and started running as fast as we could. We hid in a dark place near a tunnel, and my friend said that he drove past us, but I didn't see him. We waited there for a few minutes and then ran back home. I wonder what could have happened if he really was chasing us. My bet is that he wasn't doing anything too nefarious and just wanted to scare us anyway. But if he was chasing us and we just didn't notice, maybe he really wanted to run us over or do something even worse. What do you think? My name is Joe. My friends and I are avid off-road enthusiasts. The 3 of us always spend our weekends finding trails and mudding. We are all in our mid-20s and have been pals since we were in middle school. This story takes place in the early fall as the leaves all start to change to that burnt orange and red color. My friend Trey muds with his 1995 Toyota Tacoma. He has the most lifted and monstrous setup on his rig. Imagine a 6-inch lift kit with mudders that shouldn't be street legal. My other buddy Sean runs with a 1972 GMC Jimmy that is bright orange. It is an absolute classic ride. His truck is close to $20,000 in mods done to it. I drive my 1999 Jeep Grand Cherokee with a similar setup to Sean. Back to the story at hand. The guys and I head to some old logging roads near our hometown. We know these roads like the back of our hands. We always look for the most jagged and rough stretches of road we can grip our tires with. As we find a solid option for our 4-wheel adventure, my buddy Trey, who is leading our group up road, checks in on our walkie-talkies. We always have an open channel that allows us to communicate while out and about. Apparently, right after Trey turned on his walkie, he overheard some faint chatter on the channel we usually use. Trey yells, Joe, are you there?" I answer, "What's up, brother?" He says, "Someone on the channel said they are watching 3 off-road vehicles climb the hill." The 2 voices over the radio said, "We will wait until they reach the ridge and then we will handle it." What the fuck, man? What the fuck could he mean? Sean said, "Guys, these motherfuckers are going to try and jump us and take our shit." I told my friends that we need to stay calm and pull off before that point. We can and will avoid this bullshit, guys. My friends agree, and we found a turnoff about 100 yards before the ridge. I hopped out of the Jeep and grabbed a pair of binoculars. Trey and Sean join me and step up on the Jeep to get a better view. There is a parting of the pine trees off in the distance, and we can see 2 large men in overalls posted up near their trucks with rifles. Fuck, they're looking right at us. A bullet whizzes by my ear, and my ears start to throb and ring. Trey and Sean scream and jump for cover. I see them scream my name, but I can't hear anything. Just the high-pitched ringing. I slam my hands against my ears, trying to clear my head. I look up and my friends are scrambling to their vehicles. Boom! Another shot rings out and hits Trey's headlight. My ears clear and I jump to my feet, swing open my door and jump in. I'm shaking and I can't get my key to line up with the ignition. Please, God, get us out of this nightmare. My truck starts and Trey and Sean are in their trucks as well. We slam on the gas and head down the hill full tilt. Once we reach the main paved road, we notice this truck barreling towards us. 2 men are shooting at us. I have no idea what we did or didn't do to them. I lean over my console and puke all over my passenger seat. My nerves are shot. Just as these mysterious human hunters start tailing us, I see a cop on the opposite side of the road. The cop sees this chase and immediately this vehicle slows, pulls off a side road, and out of sight. My friends and I pull over to the side of the road, try to make sense of what just happened. The officer said he received a call, and another car passing by saw this scene. Cop knew that we were the victims. We step out and hug each other, still shaking. The officer takes a statement from us, and to this day I have never off-roaded again. Fact. Story number 2. There's nothing like going four-wheeling in the dead of winter after a fresh snow. I usually take my Subaru Outback up in the foothills near my house. The roads I take to get up to the snow are some of the worst in the state. The potholes and washed out parts are borderline dangerous. My Subaru Outback has a 4-inch lift on it, so my clearance is legit. I put some larger tires on it for the extra grab. I always take a handgun with me and a hunting knife every time I go out. I have a good-sized first aid kit and an emergency kit in case I ever break down or get stuck in the elements. I packed a light snack and headed up to the foothills. This trip was no different than any other at first. I finally reached the road that ends and turns into gravel. The road was free and clear of debris so far. Once I reached some snow on the roadway, my car made a strange sound. It's hard to describe, but it only lasted for a brief moment. I shrugged it off and proceeded. The road started to get rough, so I put my car in X drive, crawled for about 10 minutes up the hill. Once I passed the rough patch, I was in about 4 inches of snow on the road. The total drive is about 4 miles of gravel and rough road till you get to the top of the hill. I noticed that a small tree had fallen in the middle of the road. I carry a small handsaw as well. Any off-road enthusiast will have something like this for that very reason. I got out of the car and started to assess the situation. Something seemed amiss though. The wilderness was too quiet for my liking. Usually there's at least something audible, whether it be birds chirping or wind blowing through the trees. I heard a rustling right behind my ear. I spun around and saw a man in a huge trench coat standing perfectly still. My gun was under my front seat, but I always carry my hunting knife on my right hip. I remained calm and asked him what he wanted. He just smiled and walked back into the forest. What the actual hell just happened? My spine was tingling and my adrenaline on full display. I watched him until he was completely out of sight. I was in a good mood and didn't feel like he was a massive threat, so I decided to press on and continue up the road. Damn it, I wish I would have just turned tail and left that day. I'm finally 5 minutes from the top of the hill and that beautiful view when 3 large masked men walk into the road and force me to stop. I reached for my gun and had it in hand. These men proceed to flank my position and surround my car. I have no choice in that moment. Decide, fuck this, I'm driving forward. I slammed on the gas and hit one of these creeps, and I heard the man scream in pain. It's my life or his, and I'm not waiting around to find out what their next move is. I hauled ass up the hill, turned my car around to go back the way I came. The other masked attackers were checking on the man in the trench coat and threw a large machete at my car. It shattered my back windshield, and I nearly pissed myself. The men gave chase for a short time, then gave up. Holy shit, what just happened and why did this happen? I know for a fact that this first trench coat freak was a part of their group, and he must have been sizing me up and the situation. I've always prided myself on being an observant and aware person. That day could have ended so much worse for me. I thank God that today wasn't my last day. Story number 3. My best friend and I went mudding this past weekend. We are both female and 21 years of age. I've been a tomboy most of my life, and have always had more guy friends than girls through the years. My best gal pal and I have been into anything outdoors, and like to chase that adrenaline rush. We both have huge pickup trucks that are built for off-roading in the muddiest of conditions. We partake in the off-roading that you see on an off-road enthusiast channel on ESPN. The dumbest and craziest of shit goes down when the two of us come together. There's a mud track that is specifically for mudding in our hometown. We hit the track early in the day around 9 a.m. My friend's dad owns the track and lets us come and go as we please. I drove my truck on the track and started to warm up the tires. I like to get a few good runs in before I go all out. My friend was already tearing up the track and I was about to join her. I looked in my rearview mirror and noticed a mysterious truck was behind me. I've never seen this vehicle in my life. I called my friend on her cell and she said she noticed this as well. No one should be on the track right now. The track is hidden really well from the main road, so whoever this was must know my friend and or her father. The truck is now right on my bumper and flashing its lights and honking. I give it more gas and try to avoid this truck from causing me serious harm or damage. My friend is still on speakerphone and she yells that she's going to get on his ass and that we should force him off the track if possible. He brake checked her and she smashed into his steel bumper. We are in survival mode at this point. What do I do? What do I do? I spun my truck around, slammed on the gas and smashed into the side of his truck. I hit him at 40 miles per hour. He was so focused on my friend and her truck that he didn't see me coming. I T-boned his ride and he flipped over 2 times. We both pulled up to the truck cautiously and got out of our trucks. The man had a dark and blackened out helmet on. I heard a siren and noticed a police car pulling onto the track. Apparently my friend's dad came in shortly after we hit the track. He must have phoned the police. The cops pulled out a man that was in agony, and he had a compound leg fracture with his bones sticking out through his jeans. Holy shit, the man was my ex-boyfriend, Darren. We had a horrible breakup only a month earlier, and I had to get a restraining order filed against him. He was so verbally and physically abusive. I'm so thankful that I wasn't alone on the track that day. My girl had my back yet again. Lord knows what I would do without her and her dad.